planet Earth, as we see it from space. Its bluish color comes from the huge expanse of water covering it, and we would not have made a mistake at all if, instead of Earth, we called it the planet of water. Perhaps it is a more appropriate name because 71% of the planet is covered by this seemingly so simple fluid. In fact, sometimes it seems as if there were nothing simpler than the water. Without smell, taste, or color, and in such an abundance around us, we do not experience water as some sort of special phenomenon. On the contrary, we treat water wastefully and without respect. But are we really aware of the importance and peculiarities of water, and do we really know all about it? Who gave us the right to claim it, reselling it, managing its flow? Who gave us the right to waste it so recklessly, to privatize water sources and make a profit out of something to which every man has an equal right by birth, just like the right to air? Is water really so simple? And do we ignore the fact that life actually originated in water? Water, the mystery of life. The simple water we drink is the greatest mystery and wonder of nature. None of the known substances is shrouded in so many veils of secrecy, strangenesses, and paradoxes as water. This relationship goes on from the first bathing of a newborn child to washing a deceased man before the funeral, which is a custom of many nations. The word water is one of the first words that a child learns to pronounce, and in almost every language, it's a short, usually disyllabic word. Water supports all functions of the body. It lubricates all the organs and tissues, regulates temperature, dissolves waste substances in the body, and flushes out toxins. Water is life. Water is a transport medium. Water is a remedy. Water is used for recreation. Water is often a boundary between nations, cultures, and religions. One of the most important characteristics of water is its need to be clean. Water is constantly moving and has the ability to dissolve almost all the elements and compounds found in nature. Water is used for washing, cleaning, and we thoughtlessly take it for granted. It seems so usual to us that we simply fail to observe the miraculous properties of it. At first glance, water is a very simple chemical compound of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. But behind that formula lies a wonderful micro-world, ruled by the laws of atomic and molecular physics. This miraculous micro-world is ruled by the anomalies, and water has exactly 35 of them.
Voda je puna anomalija i za koju bez tih ne bi bilo, ne bi imalo tu funkciju koju ima, ali to je jedina snov koja je takva, nema nijedne druge snove, to je unikum. Ne? I neće verovati, i to nauka kaže, nikad neće biti do kraja nestažno. Kako je to moguće da jedna, onaj H2O je takva, ne? Zašto je to, kako je to, to se ne zna.
The ancient civilizations evolved by water, and grandiose monuments were erected. Even the ancient Egyptians knew the art of water management and called it Asgat Nefer. This method was used not only to manage the surface and underground waters of the Nile for irrigation of agricultural areas, but also for the energizing of the entire country. This water was brought into the very pyramids, where it was used as a tool for obtaining hydrogen and energy. The ancient Greeks also knew the skills of water management, and many Greek myths are based on the conservation of water. Dogons, the people of the southern Sahara who worship one particular religion related to the star Sirius, also have the skills of water management. They hold a view that water remembers and have special pools where they keep some kind of ancestral knowledge. The sea is the starting point of the hydrologic cycle. That is, of the permanent water cycle in nature. The water circulates its natural course. Basically, it is carried through the atmosphere, condenses, falls to Earth, is frozen, flows on the surface of the Earth, creating streams and rivers, and collects in lakes, infiltrates to underground, and eventually, sooner or later, ends up in the sea again. In this whole process, it depends not only on the temperature, but even on the exposure to sunlight, exposure to moonlight, exposure to light energy. It is important that it is always the way nature created it.
Čim mi malo narušimo tu ravnotežu, ta voda više nema taj kružni tok. I to dovodi do stvaranja zapravo pustinja i upravo onoga što imamo svake godine, ali baš svake godine u Europi imamo poplave. Ili su te poplave prije ljeta ili su poslije ljeta, ali one su redovito prisutne. U Americi imamo redovito prisutne uragane, tajfune koji su sve razorniji. Upravo razlog zbog čega je to tako je loše gospodarenje vodom i zemljom.
In addition to industry and modern agriculture, which consume vast amounts of water, man too behaves wastefully. Most people think of water as simply running from the tap. Rarely do we think about the path water must travel to reach us. Drinking and cooking, man consumes about 3 to 6 liters of water daily. All other water is used for personal and home hygiene. Just flushing toilets, almost 1/3 of daily water consumption is sent into the sewage system. And while the Western world today literally throws water away, the African poor countries have barely or less than the minimum water supply for their population. Every 6th man currently in the world has no access to clean drinking water.
Pravo na vodu bi trebalo da bude opšte čovještvo, ma nijedna država, niko ne bi trebalo da ima pravo na vodu. Što to je, i sad već se prodaje te vode, već su koncesije i to je ekonomska katastrofa, ne, da ti ono što je osnov za život, to je kao prodao vazduh, mislim, to je katastrofa ekonomska i to vodi, ako ne samo rat, nego nešto drugo. Ne.
However, the water crisis does not affect the developed countries, but primarily the poor ones, who are already overdue, and their debts are offset through water. The industrialized countries exploit this situation and by various insidious games try to get those resources for themselves. The World Trade Organization, WTO, by the force of its General Agreement on Trade and Services, GATS, has empowered the multinational corporations to buy and sell the right to water in whatever country they want. The agreement aims to erase the social role of the state and to have the water supply taken from the public to the private sector. We used to think of it as an implied, self-understood practice to receive water from the distribution system, from the water supply system, and that you could easily unscrew the taps and get water. However, what some decades ago seemed impossible to us, today is the reality. Tap water, packed in plastic packaging, has become a lucrative business. The multinational corporations found a way to a fast profit through the exploitation of water resources, primarily through the bottling of water. Bottled water is becoming one of the largest manufacturing sectors of the food industry. This industry made profits of over $25 billion, and its anticipated growth is over 30%. And even where the drinking water from the water supply meets all the requirements, there is still a growing demand for the bottled water. The bottled water itself is often no different than water that we get from nature. It is estimated that about 25% of the world's bottled water is ordinary tap water. And according to tests conducted by the American Council for the Protection of Natural Resources, 25% of the bottled water is not in accordance with prescribed standards on water quality.
To je voda koja je možda u nekim samo uvjetima mikrobiološki testirana, ali to je isto pitanje da li je, jer skandal u Americi kada je flaširana voda dokazano bila zapravo obična voda iz slavine kakvu mi možemo u kući natočiti, pokazala je da zapravo uopće više nije važna nikakva kvaliteta, nego se jednostavno prodaje brand.
One of the aims of this greed is to extract water excessively and to sell it using plastic packaging. In fact, this industry sells us water to which everyone should have the right by their very birth, all wrapped in brand packaging and sold 500 to 1,000 times more expensively than tap water. How does someone have the right to occupy the water source and in addition pump it uncontrolledly, pollute with plastic packaging and even earn a profit on it? Besides being a major environmental problem, water in plastic containers is directly harmful to human health. If water stays for a long time in a warm, bright place, then water dissolves the plastic and assumes the molecular structure of polymers.
Ona polako preuzima strukturu plastike, tako da su te molekule vode imaju polimernu strukturu i kad vodu pijete, to nije samo da je ista, nego je štetna. Sad što treba telo? Da te polimere rastvara u jednu strukturu živu, znam koja otprilike je, tako da dajete dodatan posao tijelu. To znači da pijete lošu vodu, jako ona analitički po propisima, koliko ima unutra olova i ne znam, svinca i svega ostalog, ona je u redu, nema ni mikroba, ali u principu to loša voda.
Metaphorically speaking, the human body is a biological computer, and to enter into it there are three different codes: vibrational, electric, and chemical. All codes are interconnected. Thus, chemicals may affect the vibration of the body, while the vibrational electric field can affect the chemical balance of the body. Disturbing the chemical equilibrium leads to changes in the electrical system of the body, which is reflected in negative thoughts and emotions. Since people are often mentally and emotionally unbalanced by food, medicine, and drugs, maintaining balance becomes essential for well-being. In addition, the human body, for some reason, does not have such a fast and efficient system for detecting the lack of water in the body as it does when it comes to food. When you feel thirsty, the body sends us a message that we have for some time been profoundly dehydrated. This is the cause of many diseases. Thus, enormous time and money is spent on diagnosing various diseases, but the cause could not be simpler. We are thirsty.
Pošto je poznato da je krv, a i naše tijelo, više od 70% voda, neophodno je da se hidriramo. I što obično vidimo u toj krvi kad tijelo nije hidrirano ili kad nije hidrirano sa onom živom vodom. Ta krv je ljena, viskozna, gusta. Kad se tijelo hidrira ili kad osoba koju smo pogledali krv popije nekoliko čaša vode, odmah se vidi promjena u krvi.
It is often said that for daily functioning, the body needs 2 liters of fluid. Carbonated drinks and fruit juices cannot replace the daily need for water. On the contrary, they will only harm the body. Children, often influenced by powerful corporate marketing, do not drink water, but from infancy resort to those drinks, not drinking water at all. They think of it as too common. In addition to soft drinks, on the market today is a whole range of aromatized waters with strawberry, apple, or lemon flavors, which are offered as a substitute for water. These flavored waters contain 44 to 65 grams of sugar per liter and a half of water. Very sweet chocolate contains about 45 grams of sugar. A person who would drink 2 liters a day of these flavored liquids within a month would take in up to 6 pounds of sugar. Such drinks cause a lot of damage to the body because the body consumes a large amount of energy to process them.
Ono što nam je Bogom dano od vode, mi upravo tu vodu zatrujemo i svu tu energiju uložimo upravo da bi sebe otrovali. A brzine su takve danas fantastične da je jedna linija proizvodi, znači u sat vremena 64.000 litara gotovog proizvoda za 1 sat. A onda koliko mi toga konzumiramo? A to je samo jedna linija. A takvih ima po svijetu ili po Europi i po gradovima već. Svaka zemlja ima svoju najmanje jednu punionu. Najmanje jednu. A onda možemo zamisliti koje su to količine otrova kojeg proizvodimo i unosimo u sebe.
Kad sam išao u gimnaziju, mi smo imali ovake tamo gdje se prale ruke, bili automat gdje si pritisnuo rukom dole da si dobio kao mali vodoskok pa smo pili vodu. To je nekada bilo po školama tako, da si došao pa si samo pritisnuo rukom pa je bio vodoskok da si bez čaše pio. Tako se nekada pilo, nije bilo plastike i toga. Sada to nigdje nema. Imaš automate po školama sa tom vodom, običnom ili sa limunom ili ne znam čime, što je katastrofa za zdravlje sigurno. Onda imate djecu koje su hiperaktivna, koje su debela i tako dalje. Mislim, to je sve počinje već ovdje sa tom vodom. Sa tom vodom koja uopšte nije voda, nego nešto drugo.
Od čega gradimo sebe? Znači, kuću koju gradiš, ja stanujem koji ti u svom tijelu. Od čega ćeš izgraditi svoje tijelo? Hoćeš napraviti od najlošeg ili od najboljeg materijala? A ovi ti nudiš to, najgori materijal. I takav ćeš biti. I zato imamo već djecu od 12, 13, 15 godina koji su pretili. Da. I ne samo to. A onda ova druga stvar. Farmaceutika sad ti daje lijekove, sve sisteme, fitness, da opet moraš trošiti, znači ulagati, da bi doveo sebe opet u neku normalu.
In the underground waters, which are the most common source of drinking water in cities, the residues of all chemical compounds are deposited. For the first time, experts talked about it publicly at the Congress of American Pharmacists that took place in March 1999 in Los Angeles. They revealed that in the drinking water of many European and American cities, they found the residues of hormones, antidepressants, and drugs for high blood pressure. The residues of medicines can be found in underground water in quantities so large that it is possible to measure them with ordinary laboratory equipment.
Kad neka stvari šteti ljudskom telu, pa je organska, ona u ciklusu prirode raspada. A pošto su to androgeni lijekovi koje čovjek sintetizira, niko ne zna kada će ti lijekovi da budu neutralizirani. A što je još jedna velika stvar je, niko ne zna kako ti lijekovi između sebe deluju sinergetski, kako jedan drugog dopunjavaju. I to su velike studije i sad se zna da nema više dovoljno semena kod muškaraca u Europi. Jedna vrlo prosta razlika je tome što kontracepcijska sredstva koje upotrebljava žene, one se izlučuju u vodu i tamo ostaju, niko ne zna, 50 godina, 100 godina, 2 godine, o tome niko možda se zna, ali u literaturi o tome ne postoji.
Treating drinking water with chlorine and fluorine with the aim of treating a variety of bacteria has become a usual practice in many countries. Fluorine prevents the creation of antibodies in the blood and confuses the immune system by encouraging it to attack its own body tissue and increases the tumor growth rate in people who are susceptible to cancer. In 1975, Dr. John Yamuyanis released the preliminary results of scientific research which showed that people living in areas where the water is treated with fluorine have a higher cancer mortality rate than those who live in areas where water fluorization is not present. Fluoride has a direct impact on the chemical processes in the brain, namely the pituitary gland. It is believed that the pituitary gland provides a potential link of man with the spiritual aspect, higher levels of existence. Without it, he can see only the material aspects of himself and everything else, and so behaves accordingly. Thus, fluoride is one of the substances that causes and maintains one's spiritual blindness.
Bilo bi poželjno da sve te kemikalije od klora, flora i drugih preparata koji se stavljaju u vodu, da bi voda bila ukusnija, da smo svjesni toga i da ne konzumiramo takve tvari koje i dalje imaju utjecaja na naš imunni sustav, dakle potiskuju ga i dalje, imaju utjecaja na naše stanične membrane, imaju utjecaja na naš cijelu jednu kaskadu organa u našem tijelu koji imaju veze sa čišćenjem. Dakle, a pogotovo jetru. Dakle, jetra je jedan centralni organ koji se treba nositi sa svim tim kemikalijama.
Victor Schauberger was born in 1885 and he is often referred to as the great magician of water. He himself claimed that water had taught him the knowledge that he had. Schauberger was a forester who spent his entire life among the streams and trees. However, modern science still does not have any comment on his discoveries. He realized that trout swim in the opposite direction of the water currents and are capable of jumping waterfalls as high as 30 meters. He concluded that trout have that ability in cold water, where the temperature is about 4 degrees. Observing and copying nature led him to new knowledge, which he implemented in his unusual machines. It is the very trout turbine, a device composed of spiral copper tubes with egg-shaped cross-sections and through which water flows at a temperature of 4 degrees, which is one of the most famous Schauberger machines.
特に彼の螺旋的なストリーム流れを作り、そしてそれが水に、とても良い活性化を与えるというような考え方は今水を研究する人、特に水が情報を持ち得るんだということを研究している人たちにとっては重要な一つのヒントを残しているんじゃないかと思いますね。つまり、DNA との関連です。水と DNA との関連です。DNA もご存知のようにスパイラル構造になっておりますが、水もそのような形で流れていくときに、DNA を活性化させるというようなエネルギーを持っていると、そのように考えられると思うんですね。
Schauberger realized that water behaves differently when illuminated by sunlight from water that flows through rocky areas sheltered from the sun. Water in the dark is a living water that carries energy whirling in a proper manner.
On je vodu podijelio na takozvanu živu vodu i na mrtvu vodu. Te dvije vrste vode imaju sasvim drugačija fizikalna svojstva. Voda koja je živa, ona na poseban način teče. Ona ima sposobnost nošenja, recimo, drveta koje je puno teže od nje, znači krši nekakav Arhimedov zakon. Ona ne razara obale, nego naprotiv, razara središnje korito potoka kroz koji teče, a utvrđuje obale. Mrtva voda, sa druge strane, razara obale i utvrđuje središnji dio, tako uništava zapravo svoj vodotok i mijenja. To je jedan prirodni, inače, mehanizam koji omogućuje vodi da se sklanja od sunca.
Razlika za organizam među mrtvi i žive vode je taj da organizam može da upotrebljava samo živu vodu. Živo voda je takva konstrukcija koju može telo da upotrebljava na takav način što mu na najjednostavniji način ne da prerađuje. Ako dođe u organizam mrtva voda, zašto je mrtva, to su sad druga pitanja, ne? Organizam mora tu vodu pretvara i troši energiju. I zato je puno bolje da ta energija organizmu ostane u homeostazu, pošto organizam je non stop u nekoj akciji. On se prilagođava i toplini i sve okolini se non stop prilagođava, to je ono tako zvana homeostaza. I sada zašto bi trošio i da preriđao vodu, za troši energiju kad se može dobiti živa voda. Zato je živa voda dobro za organizam. To znači, tako se štedi energija organizma da ima da sam sebe popravlja druge stvari.
At the moment of conception, the fertilized egg contains 96% water. The average human body consists of about 70% water. In other words, the life we live is mostly lived in the form of water. The essence of the human being is water. Our life begins and ends with water. Water is not just a simple universal matrix. It is the medium in which all biochemical reactions take place. It is the structural component which forms the shape form of the molecules of our body. Depending on which structure of water we take into our bodies, it is that structure the molecules of our bodies will acquire.
Возникает вопрос. Очень большая важность качества питьевой воды. Раньше считалось, что если вода химически чистая, этого достаточно, чтобы эту воду мы пили и были здоровы. Сейчас, наряду с микробиологическими исследованиями, уже на повестке дня вопрос о структурной чистоте воды, информационной чистоте воды. И тогда мы будем говорить о том, что такая информационная и структурно чистая вода является правой средой для формирования здорового организма.
Recent studies proved that water has memory and the ability to convey information. Using his method of photographing crystals and the technique of freezing water in 1/1000th of a second, Japanese scientist Dr. Masaru Emoto came to the realization that water receives and understands the information presented to it. The water sample is exposed to the information in the form of words, painting, or music, and then frozen at temperatures of -25 degrees Celsius. Emoto's tests of the natural water and tap water led to interesting discoveries. Tap water in his office in Tokyo did not form the crystals. A similar situation was also found in the rest of Asia and major European cities. Tap water in Venice, which is considered a global city, was only slightly better than water from other cities, but its forms didn't resemble crystals. Cities where tap water was good were Vancouver, Buenos Aires, and Manaus in Brazil. When taking water samples and photographing water, Emoto assumed that the difference in creating the ice crystals cannot be solely attributed to the presence or absence of chlorine, but also to other information that the water receives. During the extraction of gold, a mysterious white powder that contains platinoids is formed. This white matter reduces the yield of gold ore and is known as phantom gold. These heavy metals are not in a metal state. They are not ordinary atoms of palladium, etc. The metals which are usually known as the heavy metals, but they are rather the distorted nuclei of atoms. It is matter that is all around us, but we are not aware of it. Physics has researched some of this and called it the nucleus of high spin. Water remembers because it has such an exotic substance. Water molecules aggregate in groups. These groups are called clusters. Domain walls in water are built of these substances, almost platinoids. These atoms do not have an electron cloud. They are not diatomic, so they are not metal, but a special kind of degenerated matter, which still remains to be known. Scientists assume that clusters memorize cells, by which water records all that it sees, hears, and feels. To confirm the thesis that water has memory and the ability to transfer information, Emoto had put the same water into 2 glasses, and on the first one stuck the label "Thank you," and on the other a fool, so that the water could read it. Then he froze the water, and the result was fascinating. Water in the bottle with the inscription "Thank you" formed beautiful 6-pointed crystals, while the one with the inscription "A fool" formed only fractions of the crystal. The results were replicated when water was exposed to the words "Do it" and "Let's do it," while water that was exposed to the word "SARS" did not form any crystal. It is interesting that water forms similar crystalline structures no matter the language used for writing or pronouncing a word. This happens because water will understand the essence of the vibration or frequency rather than the form. The words gratitude and love are the fundamental principles of nature. The word that the water had been exposed to was not recognized just as a simple form. Rather, the water understood the meaning of that word. The question arises then of how information we receive affects us, knowing that 70% of our body is composed of water. Words and thoughts have individual and unique vibrational frequencies that can affect the world around them. One example is a prayer.
全てはそのバイブレーションで、設計されていると思いますね。 バイブレーションは自然現象からまたいただいているものと思いますね。水がいろいろなバイブレーションに反応するということ、それはそのようにもともと神がなるものが作られたというふうなことからあると思います。つまりバイブレーションを水だけがよくそれを感じ、そしてそれを他のものに伝えていくと、そういう役割があると思いますね。ですので人の意識とかあるいは自然のバイブレーションとか全ての音楽ももちろんそうだし、文字もそうだし、写真だとかそういうものもそうだし、全ての振動を持っているものが水に、プリントされる、というふうに考えています。だからあれがこれがということではありませんね。
Water memorizes any information it receives on its way from source to endpoint. Accepting some information, water gets new features, while at the same time its composition remains the same. For this reason, the structure of water is much more important than its chemical composition. Information is a phenomenon that does not relate to our physical world, but refers to the structural level, which is beyond our physical world. However, it is in direct contact with our physical world.
Информация – это категория такого же уровня, как категория мысль, как категория мысленные процессы или ментальные процессы. Это такого же уровня категория, как психические процессы, процессы коллективного сознания и так далее. То есть, если мы хотим понять процесс информирования воды, мы должны понять вот эти процессы, связанные с мыслью.
If in the course of explaining these processes we follow the classical path of modern science, the explanation becomes very complicated. It is so complicated that for the experts working in this field of elementary particles or electromagnetic fields, it becomes difficult to explain these processes. Such complications arise because we try to explain certain categories with the help of the categories located on another structural level. So to talk about the phenomenon of information or thought, we must move on to another structural level.
Для этого структурного уровня характерно отсутствие параметров времени и параметров пространства. То есть пространственных координат и координат во времени. То есть информация и мысли присутствуют вне параметров времени, вне параметров пространства. То есть они везде и всегда. А это значит, изменение информационной структуры начинает отражаться на всех явлениях.
Это запоминание было не очень отчетливо ясно для исследователей в связи с тем, что вода непрерывно переходит из одного состояния в другое. Но потом оказалось, что именно метастабильность воды является основой для того, чтобы она была универсальным рецептором всех воздействий, как энергетических, так и информационных, включая такие низкоэнергетические воздействия, как 10 минус 16 ватт на сантиметр квадратный. То есть чисто расчетная величина, ее пока еще невозможно измерить современной аппаратурой.
Характерная черта воды именно в том, характерным свойством воды является то, что она имеет особенно ярко выраженную способность реагирования на те информационные изменения. Например, если человек разозлится и со злобы что-то скажет этой воде, эта информация его злобы будет записана в этой воде. Вот. Если человек скажет что-то с любовью, вот это состояние любви, информация его, это отразится в этой воде. Это же состояние отразится во всем окружающем мире.
Water contains information, the information from nature, and all the concoctions that are used in natural medicine are also information to inform the body at some level. Water is the universal receptor, and its quality is improved or weakened based on information it receives. By accepting good information, it positively influences the mind and body. In contrast, the acceptance of negative information leads to disease. If this hypothesis proves correct, many valid scientific theories could experience a substantial revision.
Emotivni nivo našeg funkcioniranja, pored onih par drugih nivoa, fizičkog, energetskog, duhovnog i mikrobijskog, je vrlo jak medij i on može imati utjecaja na naše stanje u organizmu. I tipičan primjer je toga kad imam osobu s kojom radim i ona ima negativne misli ili negativno nabijene emocije ili ljute emocije. I na koji način ja mogu osobi približiti te emocije? Možda oni nisu ni svjesni tih emocija, ali kad pogledaju svoju krv i stanje svoje krvi, a krv je, kao što znamo, preko 70% voda, dakle sve te misli koje oni ponavljaju dnevno imaju utjecaja na taj nivo u njima.
Negative thoughts and emotions, stress and anxiety impair cellular energy vibration in different parts of the body, which ultimately leads to disease.
Jer je to jako bitno. Kad vidim osobu koja ima neku posturu i ljuta je i onda pogledam krv. Nevjerovatno što vidiš u krvi. Krv je kurv ili ljuta.
ネガティブ、ポジティブな言葉によって、宇宙も人間もですね、非常に健康であったり病気になったり、そういうふうにもともと設計されていると思いますね。で、しかしもう住むところがいくらでもあるんだとかね、エネルギーがいくらでもあるんだというふうに、考えることができたときに、それはそうなりますね。そういう意味で、このネガティブな思いを持ったときに、体の調子が悪くなるというのは非常に大宇宙論にまで、つながっていくとても大事な、心地学的な、そういうことじゃないかと思います。
We are responsible for what we think. Krishnamurti himself taught us that thought is the strongest energy in the universe, and that each one of us takes responsibility for his thoughts. If our thought is of the same category as information, then every man affects not just water, but the outside world too. All of us affect the environment in a way identical to the way the environment affects us, because we are one unit. The question is, how consciously and controlledly we do it. How to understand the level of conscious impact of man on the environment and environmental impact on humans.
Исследования в области психологии показали, что обычный нормальный человек в состоянии быть активным в течение дня максимально от 2 до 2-3 минуты. То есть это тогда, как человек сознательно воздействует на внешний мир. Все остальное время человек действует на автопилоте. То есть автоматически в соответствии с теми программами, которые были нам внесены в подсознание или в процессе воспитания, или в процессе воздействия общества на человека.
These 2 to 3 minutes are distributed over the entire day. They are fractions of seconds in which man fails to produce or create anything consciously, or to convey it into the outside world. The vast majority of people are in the passive state and do not affect the environment, but the environment affects them. Thus we find in the Bible that man is given the gift of free will and the ability to decide freely. But since the average person saves only 2 to 3 minutes a day for that, he or she, therefore, is not able to do it. Such people are good for society, but the question is whether all are eager to play a passive role. The rise of technology and the entertainment industry has led to the fact that people are now less aware of themselves. Today, there are techniques and methods that can increase a person's active state of consciousness up to 10 to 15 or 30 minutes a day.
Человек, который в состоянии часы быть в активном состоянии, это уже далеко не человек. Это какое-то сверхъестественное существо. Ну, хотя бы 20-30 минут человеку создает возможность выйти из-под влияния окружающей среды. Окружающая среда – это не только наш физический мир. Это намного шире. К окружающей среде относятся многочисленные структуры, которые можно определить как коллективное сознание.
The collective consciousness that surrounds us comes in many forms, from the collective consciousness of the state and religion to nation, family, etc. On the one hand, human personality can be observed narrowly as the product of family upbringing. But in broader terms, the human personality is the collective consciousness of parents, so many generations of parents that contain the information of ancestors. There are thousands and tens of thousands of people, since the category of the collective consciousness of the group is free of the categories of time and space. If we take into account the impact of structures which are called a collective consciousness, then the image of the world is completely changed, and from that perspective, even water is changed. Water can be seen as a passive phenomenon in our physical world, but there are opinions and even evidence that water can play an active role. All living beings emit electromagnetic fields and waves in the frequency of 0 Hz to 25 Hz. The frequency spectrum created during prayer is approximately the same in all religions and has a positive impact on the structure of water. The frequency of prayer of religions in all languages is 8 Hz, which corresponds to the Earth's electromagnetic frequency. Earth's resonant frequency, her heart rhythm, or Schumann frequency, is 7.83 Hz, and every cell in every living organism is using it as the reference system. Since 1987, Earth's resonance is accelerating rapidly. In 1992, it was 11 Hz, and now is more than 14 Hz, which results in the acceleration of time. The sun radiates an enormous amount of information through plasma or energy information structure that attacks the human brain, which has to process it all. The main part of the brain is water, and water is largely involved in creating patterns of information in the brain. Mankind gets the information when it is ripe for it, and the Earth supports it by its frequency or vibration. As a consequence, the Earth directly affects the level of human consciousness.
Если мы будем в неправильный момент воздействовать информацией, это касается и человечества, и деятельности политиков, это касается и бытовых вопросов. В неправильный момент воздействия информации мы можем получить от хорошей информации плохой эффект, негативный эффект.
Агрессия рождает агрессию. Что нас, собственно говоря, ожидает, если люди не изменят свою систему мышления. Если люди не начнут количество времени, которое они находятся в активном состоянии, увеличивать. Это процесс увеличения активного состояния можно назвать пробуждением. Большинство людей, когда они находятся в бодрствующем состоянии, они так думают, в действительности они спят. Это сон во время бодрствования.
Human history has experienced and still experiences conflicts due to water, so unfortunately, we can expect them in the future too. Water is a wonderful collector of information because it captures our psychological state. Imagine what could be the consequences of a process where water records the state of the people associated with the war for water.
Now, the world is正しい道の方向性に行っていると思いますか？私はそうは思いません。なんでそうなっちゃったんでしょうか。それは一番大事な水のことについて皆さんが知らないからです。そしてまた勉強をしなかったからです。水の中に全ての平和の答えとか歩むべき道筋が書いてあります。それを私たちは無視してきたということですね。どうして無視してきたんでしょう。それはある人たちの存在によってです。ある人たちとは一体誰か。いわゆる権力者を守る御用学者たちですね。権力者たちにとって水の本当の姿を市民が理解するということはとてもこれは、自分の、権力を喪失することにつながりますから許せることではないんですね。ですので科学者たちを使ってそのようなことがないように、してきました。もう数千人にわたってしてきました。水を制する者は国家を制するという言葉がそれに代表されています。水を制するってね、本当にもう従えるというそういうことですよね。そういうもののみが国を、支配できるんだというような考え方ですね。そうじゃないんですね。水を理解し水とともに歩めるものが平和な国を作っていくことができるというふうに思います。
Does water listen to the state of consciousness of the modern society? People have never behaved so arrogantly to others and themselves too. The battle for profits, which causes wars and irrational exploitation, have an impact on us all, and the most vulnerable and receptive medium is water itself. Water and all of human society really need appreciation and awareness of the situation we are in. Technocracy and consumerism have turned us into sleepers, passively observing the world around us. And in the sea of information daily provided to us by the media, we do not notice things that are essential for our good. In each individual, there is a powerful force, but only if that fact is actually understood can the collective consciousness be lifted to a higher level. Do not forget that water remembers, and that we are water. So address it with respect, and water will pay it back to you in many ways. The same principle applies to interaction with all living beings and nature. Perhaps this is a new beginning. We have shown this film to water, and the result you judge for yourselves. Everything is really up to you.